We all deserve a place to relax. Quality action storytellers, working for interactive or passive audiences, know to pace and punctuate their rises to action with moments of pause, reflection, and contextualization. When video games moved outside of the 16-bit era, many designers found expanded, explorable hub spaces to be the ideal balancing point for games that relied on a mission-based, action-heavy narrative. What modern gamers would recognize as a hub space, that being central locations they can return to repeatedly throughout a story to perform actions reflected in or reactive to the main campaign, while sometimes getting story background, grew out of an expansion to the previous generation's reliance on menus. A central hub's separate but reflective relationship to the rest of a video game's interactive spaces grants it a unique resonance when it comes to world building. Even when having multiple playable characters necessitates the presence of separate menu screens in some games, being able to address each character model at our leisure in a semblance of real-world social interaction goes a long way to legitimizing a game world. In moving toward and looking at character models, or static character art portraits directly, the information these individuals pass on can be received on a much more human level than if delivered via wall of flavor text. Some of the most effective hub spaces become a sort of museum to a player's progress, where entire inventories are on display, sometimes even with items in their 3D rendered in-game state. In most every circumstance, a player's hub reflects both their achievements and their character's growth. As with real-world homes, what objects and which people clutter someone's personal space speaks to their most private side. Jackie Estacado's penthouse suite in Digital Extreme's quad shooter / possessed mob simulator The Darkness 2 is not the most robust hub space. The player can't romance any of the captains in the mob family that hang out in the penthouse, and there is no gun range on the property to test out Jackie's arsenal before hitting the streets. But the fancy digs of our demonically enhanced mafioso does find some slick ways to expand on a story only sparsely touched on in the game's many combat missions. Players usually visit Don Estacado's suite in between firefights. Jackie tends to explore the penthouse with weapons, both supernatural and otherwise, holstered, choosing instead to speak his way through the vast majority of penthouse encounters. A row of bottles on the roof and an accompanying target practice minigame is an exception. The captains and muscle of Estacado's Franchetti family hold court in the penthouse's various rooms, boozing it up in the den, making snacks in the kitchen, or standing ready in the hallway. Most can be approached for direct conversation, and all can be overheard sharing their opinions about recent missions with each other. Aside from the occasional story-relevant discussion with an NPC, or the player electing to return to combat missions by speaking with Jackie's door guard, conversations with the extended mob clan are entirely optional. Being of a possessed sort, Jackie's brain and role in the crime world is divided into two distinct hemispheres, represented in the penthouse by three particular characters. Speaking with Estacado's toughest-nails Aunt Sarah provides most of the more in-depth emotional conversations in the game, usually revolving around Jackie's family, both in the blood and crime-related sense. On a more pragmatic level, Jamie the Grape, a capable and trusted mob operator, often facilitates story mission objectives. On the other side of the membrane is Johnny Powell, frantic cultist and Woody Allen impersonator, full of knowledge about the ancient power constantly vying for Jackie's soul. Powell also tends to act as a narrator for the in-game bonus feature that is the Penthouse Trophy Room, neurotically narrating the background of the various collectibles found across the campaign. As the events of The Darkness 2 progress, the Penthouse becomes a tool to reflect both Jackie and his continuing mental state, and the broader world beyond the areas the player visits. Jackie's actions, while not allowing for much in the way of substantial player choice in the moment, are nevertheless contextualized and commented on by his underlings. Some will even hold what they believe to be private conversations, only to change the subject and their tone when the player enters their line of sight or exits a conversation with them. Like all home bases, Jackie's penthouse is a direct reflection of its owner. Most of the first floor space is occupied with mob members and related business, much in the same way those demands weigh heaviest on Estacado's attention. Johnny Powell and the trophies that sprung from the darkness are behind a guarded door in the library, off to the immediate right-hand side of the penthouse's elevator entrance. Close, but tucked away, in both the hub's layout and Jackie's mind. A staircase rests on the left-hand side of the penthouse elevator, up which is Jackie's bedroom. This space is particularly relevant from a hub space's metaphor perspective, because inside his private quarters, away from concerns both crime and demon-related, sits a makeshift shrine to Jackie's departed girlfriend, Jenny. A memorial Jackie keeps deep inside to mourn her and torture himself. Like many games before it, The Darkness 2 plays with the feelings of safety that come from having a removed hub space by repeatedly having the penthouse invaded by enemy forces, going so far as to have Aunt Sarah executed in front of Jackie during a break-in. Where Digital Extremes deviated from the trope is throwing Estacado and the player into a demented, almost mirrored hub environment. While on a combat mission, Jackie suffers a hallucination of Jenny before being hit by a train. Being that Estacado is in possession of a seemingly all-powerful entity, rather than dying, the mob boss then finds himself in a hazy mental asylum straight out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This environment is in many ways the inverse of the penthouse. A glowing afternoon sun sits outside the asylum's windows as opposed to the perpetual night of the penthouse. Most of the same NPCs are present in both hubs, as both medical staff and inmates, but always acting against type in the asylum. Jackie's penthouse suite now comes to represent the game's most concrete version of reality, whereas Estacado is at his most stable. There are no coiling darkness tendrils at his side helping him fire guns, or phantoms of Jenny torturing him. However, this revived sense of stability in the penthouse, it goes without saying, doesn't always go uninterrupted. Estacado's penthouse suite is not the most functionally useful hub space, and is used in service to a somewhat confused and muddy story. Aunt Sarah's execution is particularly mishandled. Where this space succeeds is in providing a blueprint to our protagonist and anchoring the machinations of the main plot through NPC conversation and the occasional home invasion. And with the appearance of a metaphysical conflicting hub space, it also becomes our chief divining rod for Jackie's sanity. Because home is where the heart is, as long as the ancient god creature inside of you doesn't eat said heart first.
In this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north, where they are locked away to await the